Hello and welcome to the latest episode in the Wolves Fancast series, Stories from the Pack. At the start of every episode, I want to take the opportunity to thank everybody who continues to support the podcast, be it the regular podcasts we put out by the Fancast or the individual series that we put out, and obviously in particular Stories from the Pack. So a big thank you. If you enjoy what we do, we'd love your support either by listening, sharing online, or if you'd like to leave us a 5-star review as well. Now, in terms of the episode we're going to cover today, I'm delighted to be joined by someone who's part of the Wolves Fancast family, has written for us over the years, but he's principally a musician who's about to launch his brand new single. So we're going to cover that today, and we're going to cover his story with Wolves and kind of how those two loves, Wolves and football, come together. And the gentleman I'm going to introduce you to now is Sam Lambeth. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to come on. Like I say, I've been listening and reading the Wolves Fancast stuff for a number of years now. And like I said to you before we hit record, just the sheer calibre of guests you've had on this series, that you had Steve Marshall, Daz Hale, Joe Edwards. Like I say, these people are like celebs in my house. I worship these people. So, obviously you've got a slow week this week, means you brought me in.
No. And I think to that point, I believe that everybody has a story. And I think your story is very interesting, and everyone has a different one to tell. But yeah, it has been a bit surreal actually, because I'm someone who I love radio, and that's probably why I do this. So when I've had people on like Daz Hale, who's kind of like a radio hero for me, and people like Johnny Phillips and stuff, it is a little bit mad, I must admit. But I think what everybody has in connection, be it a higher up profile than others or not, and there'll be people from different backgrounds, and they've all got the one thing in common. Ultimately, it's Wolves that brings everybody together, and they've all got their own stories to tell as well. So, no, you're very welcome. And I know I was keen to get you on for a number of reasons, which will become apparent when we go through the record, because I know you've got some fantastic stories to tell. We're going to start with the current, and really just kind of a little get to know you for those who aren't familiar with yourself, Sam. So, you can pick up the story, but as I understand it, in terms of from the music side, you've been in a number of bands for a number of years. And I think you were telling me, really, in terms of your music to date, you've kind of been in and out of music, and you've kind of felt as if maybe I've gone as far as I'd like to, and then you've come back recently, haven't you? And part of that is with the launch of your new single. So tell us a little bit about your background in music, first of all.
Yeah, sure. I started in my first band over 10 years ago, and it was a band called the Monobloggers. Now, basically, this was because I was writing blogs on MySpace, which gives you an insight into just how popular I was as a teenager. And
there's nothing wrong with MySpace. I love MySpace.
I still think it was the best social media I do.
Absolutely.
But our drummer had a monobrow, and then our guitarist said, let's call ourselves the Monobloggers. So yeah, we did quite well, released a couple of records, played some gigs all over, supported some good bands. Like I say, surpassed our expectations. Sadly, that fell by the wayside after a couple of years. Then I formed another band called Quinn, slightly different sound. And again, we did well. We did more than I expected. It got played on Radio 1, did a UK tour, again, supported some really good bands. Then, again, inevitably, that came to an end a couple of years ago. And then, I kind of dillied and dallied in a few different bands, tried to get stuff off the ground, and it just wasn't happening. I mean, I spent 4 or 5 months trying to get a band together. And then when I eventually got one, after a month, the drummer left. So I just felt totally defeated and gutted about it. And I just thought, you know what, maybe it's time to have a breather. And then last summer in 2019, it had been 10 years since I'd formed the first band. And I thought it'd be nice to try and do something, because obviously the downside is when you've been in so many different bands. I mean, I've had more bands than Darren Day's had marriages. So, it's just, well, probably I've had more bands than Leon Clark's had football clubs. I think that's probably the best way to say. So obviously you kind of, it's confusing, I think, for the listener, because like you know, for example, I'd be at work and someone would say, "Oh, I've heard you make music. Send me some of your links, send me some of your music." And then you send them to one band and you said, "Oh, listen to this song by this other band." And it was just a nightmare. You know, you're kind of diluting it every time. So I thought it'd be nice to go on stage and just be able to play the best cuts from each of the bands. Because obviously you can't do that. When you form a new band, you write new songs, you discard all the old stuff. So last summer, like I say, I did a gig and it was kind of a 10-year anniversary. We did it all for charity, so it all went to Teenage Cancer Trust. And yeah, I played some of the best songs from the first band, the second band, all the different bands in between. Had a few musical guests come on who had played within these different bands. And then I created a Spotify album, which I called a best of, you know, tongue firmly in cheek, you know, just again, so I could have the music all in one place. And at the time, that was very much, I thought, that's the end for me now. I've tried now for 10 years. And, you know, you have your ups and downs with it. You know, like I say, I was really chuffed with everything I achieved. But at the same time, as I was getting older, it was just getting more and more difficult to find the time, find the money, and get people to come and listen and watch. And I think with social media and Spotify and things, it just gets even harder, you know, because people's attention spans these days, you know, are so short. So you're trying to get people on board, you know, and it just gets difficult. So I kind of felt a bit burnt out, and I thought maybe it's the right time. And then obviously I just couldn't stop writing songs still. So, you know, I'd be in my bedroom writing away. But it was different this time because I didn't have a band and I didn't have any gigs booked or anything like that. I was just kind of tinkering away at these songs. You know, I'd put them to one side, then I'd, you know, change a few lyrics or change the melody. And it was a really different process for me because I was so used to being being on a factory line in a way, you know, get a song, take it to the guys, flesh it out, play it, boom, boom, record, done. This time it was so much more different. I was actually taking my time. I was crafting them, you know. I was thinking, oh, a bit of keyboard sound good on this, or a bit of mandolin. So I was thinking more long term because there was just no deadline. And then before I knew it, I had 6 or 7 songs that kind of had a similar style, similar theme, and I was really happy with them because I thought, you know, these sound really fleshed out to me now. And then I was like, well, you know what? I think maybe I should get back in the studio and record a new record, and this time do it under my own name. And then this was towards the start of lockdown, actually. So this was around March, April time. And then it was like, wow, that's all well and good, but where am I going to find the money from? Because obviously recording isn't cheap. But I said to myself, you know, I'm not going to spend my own money on it. Because I thought I could easily save some money and then spend it all on recording, but you know, I'm trying to save to move out of the current house I'm in, and I thought, well, I can't really blow you know, a lot of money on this recording because it just seemed silly. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go out and I'm going to earn this money. So I did. I took up some freelance work over a few months, and that brought a bit of money in. I sold loads of stuff on eBay. I mean, loads of stuff. Really randomly, the stuff that was going on eBay was my old Wolves tops, which I didn't really think would sell. I mean,
no, they do, yeah.
Yeah, it surprised me. There weren't even your vintage Goodyear ones or anything like that. You know, we're talking the one with Silverbug on the front and you know, stuff like that. I mean, they didn't fit me anymore anyway, but they were going. And I mean, even like the Wolves training tops some years ago, you know, they were just plain. They didn't even have the sponsor. I'm just plain. They were going. So I sold loads of stuff on eBay, sold a guitar on eBay, stuff like that. And then I did some shifts on a building site as well. I'm not sure how happy they were to have me around, but you know, I should say a big thanks to my mate Cal, actually, because he was the one that got me on there. So on a Saturday, I'd get up at 7 and go and spend the day there. So and then in the end, after a few months, I had the money together, and then I went into the recording studio with a chap called Ryan Pinson, who's a Wolves fan, and also the guys that have done that Wolves CD. I can't remember what they're called. They're playing
the Wolfpack Howlers.
The Wolfpack Howlers. He produced that.
Right. Yeah.
because I was in the studio with him, and he was saving something, and I looked at his files, and I saw Nuno had a dream on one of his files, and I said, "What's that about?" And he said, "You not heard about these guys?" And I think his mates are one of them. So yeah, he produced that record. So yeah, cut the songs over 2 weeks. Exhausting it was, because I've never done it on my own before. I've always had a band with me, and you know, it used to be that, you know, the bass player would go and do his bit, the drummer would do his bit, then I'd go up and do the guitar and the singing. But this time I was kind of doing everything. So it was just from 9 to 5, which doesn't seem that long, I know, but it's just constant on it, recording, tinkering, writing, doing retakes, that kind of thing. So it was a really exhausting process, but once I got the results back, I was really chuffed. And then so yeah, the first single's coming out. Well, it'll be out when this comes out. So yeah, so I'm really excited, to be fair. And yeah, so it's a bit of a different vibe for me. It's kind of I mean, I'm loath to say this because obviously they're so legendary, but you know, people like Bruce Springsteen, Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, this kind of Americana, southern rock, kind of folky sound. So it's quite mature, quite acoustic based for me. So it's a real different direction, which is how I wanted it to be. You know, I wanted it to be a bit different from what I'd done before. Less emphasis on just guitar rock, you know, trying to flesh it out with mandolin and piano and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of probably a long-winded
No, not at all.
recap of it.
And
Yeah.
I think, sorry, Sam, I think what it shows though is, you know, what we'll be doing on the audio version of this. So I don't know what format you'll be listening to us on out there, because we're on YouTube if you've seen us visually, but we'll put the links to the single that Sam referenced there. But we'll be playing out this audio podcast with the single, and I think what you'll pick up on it is the Sam reference. For what it's worth, for me, as just a fan of music rather than mere critique, is a real personal, tender and emotive and, you know, careful and considered song. And it's a fantastic song, and there's a number of songs from Sam on his Spotify which is available, and again we'll put those links out there for people. But I think it's interesting when you listen now and you talk about your story, because it's very self-made in terms of, you know, these are difficult times and you're kind of your own boss, and you've gone, okay, well, I still believe in this, and I've done my groundwork, I've been in different bands. As you say, you've honed your craft, you've liked this, and maybe this is the direction I'll go in. But to get to that point, then I need to facilitate that by, I need to put the graft in, get the money, be it on a building site or so forth. And it shows that it means something at the end of it. You'll have something that's personal to you that you can share. So it's great to kind of get that. And I guess at this difficult time, if people have listened to the podcast at this point with Pogman, for example, who's another musician, I do feel for people in the industry at the moment, but also I think, well, if you flip it up in reverse, there's opportunities now that are created in this time where you're afforded perhaps a little bit more time to hone your craft and perfect it. But, you know, I remember, I don't know, you've probably played some of these venues locally. There was a point, I probably got about 10 years ago locally in Wolves, where you go and see a band at the Varsity, you go and see a band at the Little Civic, you go and see the band at the Wolfer. And I remember there was a Wednesday night, I was seeing a band upstairs in the Varsity. And if people know Wolverhampton, or many obviously will listening to this, but if you don't, within such a small area, there was lots of bands and lots of music going on. And obviously we're time sensitive, but we're recording this in the midst of a local lockdown and so forth. And it's a difficult time, but it's good to know that people are still out there grafting and still, you know, taking that opportunity to follow your dream, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, 10 years ago, I mean, maybe this is controversial, but I thought Wolverhampton, the music scene, the venues was better than Birmingham. I mean,
Yeah.
we were never short of gigs. And like you say, we had the Varsity, that upper room, which was like a dungeon, but it was a great little space. Like you say, you had the Little Civic, which was like a rite of passage to play that venue. You know, that was the venue you wanted to play when you just formed a band, because it had so much history. And then obviously you had the Slade rooms, which came afterwards. The Civic Bar was great as well.
Yes.
But I was really lucky because I got to play, like I said, I got to play the Wolfer, and I got to play the Little Civic, Slade rooms, Varsity. We did a residency at the Prince Albert, oddly.
Yeah.
I always remember that one, that we did that gig there, and we were selling CDs afterwards. And this is how long ago it was. You know, people still had CDs. And this one guy, he was like, "Oh, I love your band, love the songs. I own a shop in Wolverhampton. I'll put your CD on all day. It'll be blasting there. You'll get loads of fans." And we was like, "Oh, great, thanks. What shop do you own?" And obviously, we were hoping, "Oh, is it a music shop? Is it, you know, WH Smith's or whatever?" He was like, "Oh, you know, Adult Pleasure Zone." He was like, "I own it." So I was like, "Great." So when someone's in there purchasing some flavoured items, they're going to be hearing my voice over the top of that.
That's brilliant.
So, my face is dropped.
Yeah. Well, you know, you got to get. Yeah, well, we'll have to edit that one because we've got to be careful what we say. But let's just.
Oh, sorry.
No, not at all. That's fine. It was the way my mind was going in terms of, you know, the support. However you get it is appreciated. But let's just say,
Yeah.
you may have, I suppose, then, Sam, if that music was going on, you could have been a part of some good nights for people out there in the Midlands without you knowing it, actually.
Yeah, I can't imagine my music would suit that particular genre.
No. But no, fantastic. I mean, we'll circle back to the music because we'll see in a moment how it's intrinsically linked actually to your football story. So in terms of you, that's the now. If we take it back to the beginning for yourself on a football level and a Wolves level, of course, when did it start for you, Sam? When was your first memories as a fan, and what got you into Wolves?
I mean, everyone in my family is a Wolves fan, so there was no escape. I mean, it was ingrained in me from the start. It's like a religion, isn't it? It's like a religion, and that's the only way I can describe it. So I grew up in like a football household. My brother and my granddad and my dad actually were season ticket holders. I think my mom went to games as well. So everyone was really big Wolves fans, and I was a massive football fan for as long as I can remember. I mean, I was obsessed. Like, you know, I'd get up on a Saturday morning and watch that show on Channel 4, the Football Italia one.
Yes.
Me and my brother would have to have separate FIFA games, even though we lived in the same house, because we'd be on it that much. I had LMA manager, you know, championship manager. I was, like I say, I used to watch all the games from random places, random leagues. Like I say, I was obsessed, and obviously I was a Wolves fan. I think when I went to high school, secondary school, it kind of killed it off for me a little bit. So in year 7, I think in year 7 was the year when Wolves were in the Prem with Dave Jones. So, you know, I remember like having the shirt and stuff like that. I think it was around year 9 where I kind of started to drift out of football a little bit, actually. Because I think when you go to secondary school, well, at my secondary school anyway, it was kind of like the hard lads were the ones that got picked to play football. You know, whether they were any good or not, because they were hard, you know, they were always the ones that played. And I was always one of them lads that was just last picked. I mean, nothing's changed now. I mean, when I play with my mates down the, you know, do 5-a-side, I'm the last pick. But back then it was like, you know what, if you weren't like one of the hard lads, you were persona non grata, really. So, you know, that kind of put me off a little bit because I wasn't playing, because I wasn't really getting picked. I was getting picked last, and, you know, no one really thought I was any good. And then just like little things at school, I remember like when you had the Panini stickers and things like that. You know, I remember sitting there one time with these two lads who are, again, we know these hard lads, and they were talking about footballers, and they looked at me and they're like, "Oh, you ain't got a clue who any of these are, Matt, have you?" And I was like, "I have. I know all of them." And they're like, "No, you don't. You know, you ain't got a clue." You know, I was just kind of brushed off as being like, I wouldn't say a nerd, but I wasn't smart enough to be a nerd. But I think I was kind of brushed off as being, you know, oh, you know, he's a wimp, he's all that, you know what it's like at school. And
Yeah.
I think then, and then the mates I had then as well just weren't into football, so I just drifted out of it for a few years. And to be honest with you, I didn't really get back into it until probably like early 2010. So probably halfway through the Prem season with Mick McCarthy. that's when I kind of started then to get back into it. Now, by this point, I'd left school, and like my brother was a season ticket holder still, so he was still going. But again, he hadn't really, I don't know, it just wasn't, maybe it's like whiskey for me. I had to get a bit older to get fully into it. But football just wasn't interesting me. I think I was just so into music at that point that there was just nothing else. But then I started playing football again with my mates. We did like a six-a-side team and stuff like that. And obviously they were all serious football fans, and all of them Wolves supporters, apart from one who supports Wolves and Man United, which, don't get me started on that.
Yeah.
But because they were so into it, I just naturally fell back into it again. And at this time, it felt like this was it. You know what I mean? I thought I'm fully back on board now, and this is me for life. I'm fully back into football again. And then since then, it's been the same again. Whereas I love it. I think, but my first Wolves game was surprisingly late. Then it wasn't until the 2012-2013 season. So really, that's quite late, considering, like I say, I was in a house full of Wolves fans. But again, I think it was part financial and part just not losing that interest for a little bit. That I hadn't. I know I used to work weekends as well, which didn't help. But then I thought, I'm going to go to a game. So my first game was the Aldershot, and it was one of them cups. I can't remember which cup it was, but it was the day the North Bank opened or reopened. So we were sitting in the North Bank.
Yes, I think I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was Stella Solbacken's first competitive game, and obviously it was a drab. I think it was like a drab 1-1 draw, and we kind of just edged out on penalties. So you can imagine, you could forgive me if I thought I ain't coming here again, because it was 2 hours wasted really. But then to make matters worse, when we left the ground and we went back to my car had actually been broken into.
Oh god!
So talk about insult to injury. But I mean, I just remember walking down the street with my two friends, and they went, "Oh, Sam, someone smashed your window." And I was like, "Yeah, very funny." And then when I got closer, I was like, "Oh god." Now, I had a Nissan Micra, the kind Jay has on the in-betweeners.
Yes.
Horrible old red. I mean, mine wasn't even red anymore. It kind of lobsterized a little bit. It started to turn a weird kind of pink colour, which obviously didn't help my social life. But anyway, I bought a new stereo for it because it had been my birthday a couple of weeks before. So, I mean, straight away, I'd made myself a target there. I'd made this rubbish car with like a gleaming brand new stereo system in it. But they'd smashed the passenger side door and they'd just taken the face. So, you had the face before the stereo. They'd just nicked that. So that was really cruel because I had the stereo system still, but not the face. So they nicked that.
God.
Weirdly enough, they nicked one of my CDs, just one of them. And then when I got home, I'd been to my nan's just before the game, and my nan had given me some shopping to give to my mum. And my mum was like, "Can you just go and get the shopping?" So I went back out to try and find it, and I was scrambling around thinking, where's it shopping? And then I realised that they'd nicked that as well.
Oh. So
basically, they'd stolen a CD, the face of my CD player, and also, I don't know, a Warburton Super Toasty and some Dairy Loo. So all I can think of somewhere, there was some thieves that were sitting there enjoying a cheese sarnie, listening to Red Hot Chili Peppers. So yeah, I mean, as first experiences go of Wolves games, I'm surprised I went back.
That's brilliant, because I think we always talk about the first games and memories and the backdrop and the sort of stories that kind of good or bad or indifferent. So yeah, I guess so. It's an interesting one though, something that you mentioned there, because there's no one route into being a Wolves fan or a football fan. And to sound cheesy and corny, sometimes life gets in the way, or circumstances get in the way, or friendship circles and so forth, come into play. So for you then, you were a fan, you're local family of Wolves fans, but you kind of, I guess, didn't have that opportunity where it kind of stuck. So, but after that first game, were you still kind of, although it was a bad experience, you thinking, yeah, I'm kind of more full-time a fan now, or?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that season, because like I say, I'd started to get back into it again during mixed Premiership years. But I remember really being into it. Ironically, the season we went down, I don't know if it was just I had a little bit of excitement because it was new and different. And also we had Stalasol back and in charge, and we were bringing in all these, new exotic players. I remember like seeing Siggy and thought, I'm going to grow my hair now. I was really excited. And like I say, my brother was the opposite, because I think when we went down, he wasn't as bothered. We still went to some games together, but he didn't renew his season ticket. But I went to 12 games that season, I think, home and away. So every chance I could get to go, I was going. But let's say I watched 12 games. I didn't see a victory until the 12th time I went.
Oh, God, wow.
So, there was dogged persistence, there for me. But yeah, like I say, I think that season, I just remember being, like I say, really excited and really into it. And I kept on going the next season as well. We went down to League One. Obviously, I'm not a season ticket holder, so it gets hard. It's harder and harder. Obviously, I mean, before lockdown, it was really difficult to get tickets.
Yeah.
But I do try and go whenever there's still tickets available.
Brilliant. And in terms of from, the McCarthy era to date, from a football perspective, any particular highlights sort of to date in terms of any games that stick out to you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I say, there's games that stick out for good and bad reasons, isn't there? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I always remember that season when I really started going. The nadir for me, which is ironic because we won, was probably when we beat Bristol City. And obviously we had that calamitous back and forth between Davis and he came in. He obviously broke his hand at half time.
Yes.
But even though we won, I just remember feeling absolutely bereft afterwards, because I just thought that was dreadful. Even though we won, I just remember thinking that was two League One teams playing each other, which obviously is what happened to both of them. And I thought, we played dreadful and just about beat Bristol City, who obviously at the time were marooned at the bottom of the table. And then I just thought, well, how are we going to get victories against anyone else if we're playing that bad? So that was kind of one of the games that sticks out for me as a bad point. But I think in terms of the highlights, definitely in League One, the 6-4 victory against Rotherham. I mean, that was obviously crazy, wasn't it? I mean, that's kind of like that in a way. That set a precedent for what the Premiership's like now. What I mean? We're getting used to this now, but it was a novelty back then. I mean, that was amazing. The 4-0 victory against Gillingham as well. The first home game of League One, where we was a bit nervous. Gillingham had been a bit of a bogey team in the past. We'd done it. We got a credible 0-0 against Preston, hadn't we, in that first game of that season?
Yeah.
But I think no one really knew what to expect. Kenny Jackett had brought the youth in, which again was really exciting, I think, because I think we all knew that we had these players like Bath, Price, Doherty, and then also we had McAlinden and Ishmael. I mean, at the time we thought they were going to. I mean, obviously they didn't quite live up to expectations, but we were excited by them as well. But that was the first game, the first competitive game where you actually saw, the potential and the caliber, and again, it was just such a relief to see a team scoring and a team that were playing for each other. So that was up there. But I would say one game that always sticks out to me was when we came up from the Championship, when we beat Bristol City 2-1. So I think that was around Christmas time. It's kind of, I think like Steve Marshall kind of mentioned it before, how you kind of tether some of the Wolves moments to kind of stuff that was going on in your own life at the time.
Absolutely, yeah.
And for that game, I was working in London at the time, so I think I've been in London about 4 or 5 months at that point. But I'd just come back for Christmas, and I hadn't really come back much up until that point. And I'm a bit of a homebird, so for me not to come back for a few months was like, it felt like years. So I came back, and it felt like when you break up for school, it was like, I'm back home, back with my mates. And I didn't even go to the game, but I watched it at the pub. I watched it at the Red Lion in Wednesfield with some of my mates. And I just remember, obviously we were 1-0 down, had a player sent off, and just those goals going in. I mean, obviously I've been to a fair few Wolves games now, and the atmosphere when we score, obviously, is just incredible. But I just remember, because I think it's because we was in a closed space.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it would never happen now, COVID or not. You know what I mean? We were so cramped in. But just when that second goal went in, the winning goal, honestly, I mean, there were tables flying over, chairs falling to the floor, people were hugging each other that they'd never met, pints were being splashed all over the place. Just the atmosphere was electric. And I remember, obviously, I just moved to a new city, and I was still making friends, getting used to a new way of life. So I'd been feeling a bit, I wouldn't say down, but obviously it wasn't like being at home. And just that moment, just being with my mates, going crazy, watching the Wolves win, and knowing at that point, I think, in your head, you thought, okay, we're going the distance now. We're going to, we're going to get to the Prem again. Just that moment was just amazing. I just loved it. But there's been so many great moments. I mean, I went to Braga. Me and my brother went to Braga and watched Wolves there. And again, like Steve said, just getting to see them in Europe. I mean, I haven't been a fan for as long as most Wolves fans, but even I felt the gravity of it. You know what I mean? So yeah. I mean, let's face it. The past 3 years, there's so many moments you could pick. These are the good times.
They are the good times, and it's and just you're referencing there sort of being in the Red Line in Wednesfield, and sort of that atmosphere, and it just feels a world away. I don't know about you, but if I watch TV now, sort of pre-COVID, and I see people close together and stuff, it just freaks me out, and it's weird because it's like that's kind of what we're doing. And I hate the cliche new normal, but it's still, I find it a little bit uncomfortable. And but it is kind of what I get over in this series. And this was timely because we launched this series essentially just as we were going into lockdown, because ultimately there was no football taking place. But what it's given us an opportunity is to reminisce, but hopefully it's not too nostalgic. And as I keep stressing that, when it's safe to do so, we'll have those moments being at the game or sharing them with friends and family, at our locals as well, so we can be part of it. But I think, it's strange time, but that Bristol City game, did stand out. And I think you're right to mention the jacket era, I was going to say there, because, wherever this club is going to go, and where we expect and where the owners perhaps want it to go, that jacket start of it really for me was, from that point on, if we would have spent longer in League One, would Fosun have eventually been interested? As that you could even start the ball rolling there really in terms of a resurgence.
It's easy to forget, isn't it? Really, but he laid the foundation, because we were a club in freefall, weren't we? I mean, I think a lot's made of Solbakken, and he gets a lot of criticism. But for me, I blame the players. I'll be honest with you. I thought the players just didn't want to play for him. I remember, like Steve Marshall said, again, I keep referencing him, I know, but I totally agree with him. I went to Peterborough and Ipswich that season, and it was heartbreaking. It was just like, what are these players doing? I think, and the players Solbakken bought in, obviously Sacco was great. I think Bakari would have been brilliant if he had obviously got injured, I don't know, just getting out of bed. But then obviously Dean Saunders, that era, for me, that was just shocking. I mean, he was just so out of his depth, and the football was dreadful. The signings were dreadful. Kenny Jockett, I think we forget, don't we, just what a job he had in his hands to detoxify the club, not just with some of the players that he had, but also just with the fans, because I think as a fan base, we were just totally, I can't think of the word really, but I think there needed to be, he had to try and get us back on side.
The relationship had broken down, hadn't it? I think.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. But I love the way that we did it. I mean, obviously we spent money, but we didn't spend vast sums of money. We bought in Kevin McDonald, who, was brilliant. I just remember watching him that season. He never gave the ball away. He was brilliant. Obviously Scott Goldborn was good. Then he bought New Dico in January, and that kind of gave us that impetus we needed. But like I said before, just the fact he trusted the young players, which was something Saunders wasn't really doing at the time. I remember Saunders bought Bath in for a game and then just took him back out again, which seemed a bit, annoying. But Jackie bought, I keep saying Bath, I know it's Bart, isn't it? he bought Bart in. Doherty was there. Like I say, and Jack Price as well, just to give the youth a chance. And that, like you say, just set a precedent, really.
I mean, we could probably spend a deep dive on the Selback and Saunders era, and we did a little bit of that when we did the live show. But it's a really interesting part in our history, essentially. And I've had different conversations about Selback, and I personally thought he was a decent fit. He was just timing, and I've listened to a few other podcasts where some of the players of that era have probably been a little bit defensive and said, what he tried to introduce wasn't right for the Championship and so forth. But we started really well, and then, the thing is, my comparison with Selback and Saunders is Selback, and whether you liked it or not, you could see there was a clear system and a way of playing. But with Saunders and what you referenced there, it was kind of like, here's the names in a hat, right? I'll throw them up in the air, and that's your starting 11, and
Yeah, I think with Saunders, Saunders, I think, was trying to get back to the kick and rush style. So like you say, Solbakken was trying to introduce something a bit more cultured. I remember Solbakken always said, I want 3 transfer windows to mould my squad. And I think he just about got one, didn't he? So who knows what could have happened if he'd have been given the time. But obviously the results weren't there. But like you say, with Saunders, I think, we tried to go back to an old kind of more direct style. And it just wasn't working, really.
No. Well, what we'll do is after this very short break, we're going to have a look into really where Sam's music, as we referenced at the start, linked up very well with his following of Wolves as well. Right after this. So, Sam, in terms of yourself as a musician, we referenced it at the start of the podcast, and we've talked a little bit about your Wolves story. Now, I think this is amazing. So talk us through the time you were asked to perform on the pitch.
Yeah, sure. Well, there's a guy who used to run kind of the Saturday media stuff. He was on the pitch stuff, called Jason Forrest.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going back to when I first formed the band. My dad said to me, it'd be great if you could get your music played at the Molineux. And obviously, it would. But I mean, what the chance of that happening are slim. But somehow my dad got Jason's email address. I'm not sure how. I didn't really ask. But I remember dropping Jason an email with a link to my band, the Monobloggers, their first record, and he really liked it. And then the next thing I knew, our music was getting played at Molineux, so over the tannoys at half time, before the game, stuff like that. Now at this point, again, like I say, I was kind of a part-time pack member, I suppose. I was kind of feeling my way back into it. And I just remember I got loads of texts off people going, I'm at the Molineux, I swear, I've just heard your music being played. It was just such a surreal moment. And, you just can't put a price on how great that is to be able to say that your music was getting played. I mean, music played out. I mean, at the time it was late 2009, so Spotify was still quite nascent. A lot of us unsigned bands, we hadn't really picked up on it yet. We were still flogging CDs. We were still doing the old do a gig, try and flog them at the back of your car. So to then all of a sudden go from that to getting your music played out to a big stadium full of people in a Premiership game, it was just amazing. I mean, did we get any concrete fans from it? Probably not. But all I know is, all of a sudden in the local music scene, are standing accelerated really quickly from that, because we were only a new band at the time. You know, we were kind of young sluggers playing a few pubs around Ashmore Park, and you know, if we were lucky, we got a gig at the Varsity. So we hadn't been together that long when this happened. So all of a sudden, to get played there at the Molineux and to have a lot of different people hear it, and you know, word of mouth spread, you know, all of a sudden overnight we'd gone from these young chances that no one had heard of to all of a sudden being considered quite, you know, in a local sense, a force to be reckoned with. But then, so like I said, that was the first part of it, and to get your music played, like I say, over the tannoys, that was great, you know. But then, like I say, Jason would always say to me, "Oh, hopefully one time, if the opportunity arises, I'll get you to perform on the pitch." That would have been tricky at the time, because I was in a 4-piece band. So obviously, to get a 4-piece band on at halftime, you know, it's not the Super Bowl halftime show, is it? So you got 10 minutes. So trying to get 4 lads on just wouldn't have happened. But I knew that people did it. You know, I'd seen people go out onto the pitch and play, and so I knew there was a chance. But then it didn't happen for years later. So the Monobloggers first got played at the Molineux 2009, 2010. So probably throughout that season sporadically. But then I didn't actually perform on the pitch until 2014. So by this point, I wasn't actually in a band, which probably helped me get the opportunity to do it. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my music at that point. I was tempted to go solo then, but I wasn't too sure. And again, I was kind of writing songs, but I didn't have anything concrete down. And Jason said to me, "Oh, you know, Wolves are playing Peterborough this Saturday." I think it was the Friday, so I think it was like Wolves playing tomorrow. Do you want to come and play on the pitch? And obviously, I was like, "Are you serious?" So, like I say, I remember I got there really early, and at first I played in the foyer as a little bit of a warm up, and it was all right. No one was really listening, which is fair enough. I just remember walking out onto the pitch, and just obviously you just get that rush of adrenaline, and that, you know, it takes you back, you know, when you just walk out. I mean, obviously, when I walked out, it's not like when the players walk out, no one was like cheering, you know what I mean? But just even so, just the sheer amount of people. I mean, I always say, I don't want it to sound boastful, but not many people can say they've played in front of 24, 25,000 people.
Yeah.
How many of those 24, 25,000 were listening? I don't know. But to be able to be given that opportunity was amazing. So I'm always eternally grateful that I got it. And like I say, it's something that I'll always think back to. In fact, the other day, I reactivated my Facebook to promote the new record, and I was looking through old pictures. And one of my mates who I used to play every Sunday with, he took a picture, it was like a crude zoomed in shot of me on the pitch. But I was like, that's the evidence there. And I always look back at that picture, and even then you can see the South Bank behind it and just the sheer amount of people. And I mean, I remember I did a song called Nod My Head. Now, Jason loved this song, and it was the Monobloggers' most famous song. You know, for those listening and not watching, I just did inverted commas on the famous. But people used to like that song, and but I'd written a new song, and I said to Jason, he said to me, "Okay, what song are you going to do?" And I said, "I've written a new song, I think I might play it." And then Wolves were 2-0 up at this point. And he said, "What's the song called?" And I said, "It's called Throw It All Away." and Jason just looked at me, and I think Dave, you know, Wolves Fancast, founder Dave was in the room. They kind of looked at each other and went, "Yeah, I don't think you should play that one if we're winning." So Jason just went, "Why don't you nod my head? You know, I like that one, you know it." So I went out and did it. And I remember, unfortunately, there was some problems with the mic on the guitar, so it kept cutting out. So I was going a cappella at some point. But now I didn't know. I mean, I was in my world on my own. But like I say, a few people said afterwards, "Oh, it was a shame about your guitar." And I was like, "What do you mean? I thought I played it well." And I was like, "No, your mic." So that was a bit gutting. But you know what? I don't even think about that. I don't even think about the fact that, oh, I wish the mic had worked. You know, I just think back to just getting that opportunity. And my mum and my sister came and watched. I mean, my sister was probably about 4, 5 at the time, so she weren't really interested. But I think I put a shout out to some of my mates and I said, oh, you know, this afternoon I'm playing at the Molineux. And they was like, yeah, whatever. I was like, no, I am. And I didn't think any of them had made it. And then I was walking off the pitch and I walked past the South Bank, and then 2 of my mates were literally just right there and they just shouted at me and I was there. So that was nice as well that my mates got to see it too. But yeah, honestly, just such an amazing experience. And it's one that, you know, when people ask me about music, I inevitably will get to, I inevitably bring it up. But yeah, just a great experience. And I mean, people always say to me, "Oh, weren't you nervous? You know, surely you were really scared." But the only thing that ever scares me about gigs is whether there's going to be anyone to watch. Like, I never really get nervous about playing, which is, I suppose, weird for a musician. I think if there's a crowd there, it's going to make me good because I'll just feed off that energy. So that was what made it even better for me. I just wasn't. I was the right amount of nervous. You know, I wasn't cocky or anything, but you know, I just went out just really excited. So yeah, I'd love to do it again, but I don't think it's going to happen. But just to be able to say I've done it once was a great experience. And my car didn't get broken into this time.
You never know, and yeah, I think you've took me back to a time where, and I think it was probably because Jason was in charge of the match day sort of experience at that time. As you say, there was a lot of bands. There was a lot of local bands. Like, you might remember the band called the Rubicons and the Lines, with some local bands around that time that I had some friends in, and they got their time as well. And yeah, it is kind of a strange one in terms of such a big, you know, 25, 30,000 people, and there's you and your guitar, but it's on your CV and it's there. You have played the Molineux, you know, and
yeah. Well, to me, like I say, at that point, I was very, like I say, I was fully back as a Wolves fan. So it was like headlining Glastonbury for me.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you just couldn't put into words. I mean, just to be able to stand on the pitch was amazing, you know, but to go and play, it was, like I say, it just a once in a lifetime experience.
Brilliant. And in terms for yourself, Sam, as I ask everybody on this, what does it mean to you to be part of the pack? What does being a Wolves fan and being local, what does that mean to you? And does that take an extra significant, or has it taken an extra significant when you've had the opportunity to perhaps play music outside the area as well? Do you kind of see yourself as an ambassador for the club or the town in that sense?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, whether Wolves would want me as an ambassador, I don't know. But I think as I've gotten older, yeah, I'm so much more proud to be where I'm from and proud to support Wolves. And whenever I've gigged, I always have a Wolves shirt on my amp. Yeah, I think for me, being part of what makes being a Wolves fan interesting is that it's never boring. I mean, like I mentioned to you before we started rolling, that the only time that I've felt kind of deflated was the 2015-16 season, and that was because he committed the cardinal sin that he bored me. You know, we just coasted. But I think, you know, like I say, the best thing about being in the pack is that it's like being on a roller coaster. You know, you have your downs. It's like life, I guess. You have your downs, you have your ups, but you know that when there's, you know, troubling periods, dark periods of uncertainty, you know that, you know, there's going to be good times coming, and that's just what makes it interesting. I mean, any football fan loves their club unconditionally and wouldn't say a bad word about them. But I think from the outside looking in, I think I look at other clubs, I won't say any clubs, but, you know, you look at some clubs where they're kind of set in one place, aren't they? They're not going for promotion. Sometimes they're just trying to stay in a league, or, you know, they're just kind of mid-table every season. And I just think I'm so glad with Wolves that, you know, every season is just different. There's always a challenge. There's always a desire and energy, and it's just always fun. And I think that's what makes part of being a Wolves fan so fulfilling, really. But yeah, like I say, over the years, I remember I actually worked with Robbie Dennison before. I worked with him and his wife Denise, so that was quite a cool experience. And he got me Steve Ball's autograph, so that was quite nice. He never gave me his own. I didn't ask for it, but I didn't ask for Steve Ball, so he just came in one day and went, "Oh, I got this for you." So, but he's a really nice guy as well, really down to earth. So that was quite cool to work with him, who obviously had quite a Wolves pedigree. And I mean, I've met Steve Ball a couple of times, as have a lot of people. I mean, my one friend, I don't know if I should say this because it might not go on, but for some reason he just doesn't like Steve Ball. He's never met him, but for some reason he just hates Steve Ball. I mean, he hates everyone. I mean, he makes Jack D look like a Boy Scout leader. He's just he's proper miserable. But for some reason he just doesn't like Steve Ball, and Steve Ball actually does personalised phone calls. I think you have to pay 30 quid, but like if it's someone's birthday, and me and my mates, we're not going to do it now, but what we were going to do, we were going to have a whip round, get Steve Ball to call one of our phones when we were with this lad, and then go, "Oh, it's your girlfriend, it's urgent, she's called me." And then when he gets the phone, and it's Steve Ball, just to see his face. But in terms of music, I think it gives you an instant connection to people, random people. I mean, there's been times when I've gigged and it's just a conversation starts straight away, and I've met some Wolves fans that I wouldn't have known were Wolves fans, and it just puts you at ease. I think, I suppose that's the same for every football fan, but I think as a musician, I never used to really talk about it that much on stage and stuff, but now I am, like I say, a fervent supporter on stage of Wolves, and I always proudly say that I'm a fan, and like I say, I think it's just never dull, and it's an honour, really. It's an honour to support them, and it's an honour to when I play on stage, it's an honour. And when I did my last gig, which was that 10-year anniversary one, I actually had an old gold guitar, which is totally coincidental, but I had a Wolves sticker on that. So there's some pictures of me on stage with the Wolves head proudly emblazoned. I mean, there's one music promoter who's an avid West Brom fan, so I swear he never used to book me because he knew I was a Wolves fan. So there's downsides, but I just think it's great because talking about football just puts people at ease. I think for me, like, I'm quite a shy person. So when you're in the music industry, I know I'm not properly in it full time, but I'm kind of in it. Just talking about football, just instantly is a connection there. If you know someone's a football fan, you can go, "Oh, so what about that result of the weekend?" You know what I mean? And then if they've signed a player from you, it just instantly, there's a rapport there, and it just makes gigs so much easier. Straight away you've made a mate just from talking about Wolves or talking about football. And it helps break the ice, because a lot of musicians, I think, are a bit shy, we're quite an introverted bunch, so the topic of football is just one that you can instantly latch onto.
And I think I was just thinking now, as you're talking, you're in a steam company, with Wolves fans and musicians, Robert Plant, Beverly Knights, and big names there. But I also was thinking, when you mentioned Glastonbury, that iconic Wolves flag as well, that's always at Glastonbury. Glasgow Wolf, I think, I believe he's been to pretty much every Glastonbury, so I'll give him a shout out because he's on Twitter if you follow him as well. And there's a fantastic story about his story at Glastonbury, where people have kind of met around the flag, because as people will know who've seen Glastonbury over the years, that's part of Glastonbury, isn't it? That Wolves flag.
Yeah, oh God, yeah. It's the first thing, I mean, as a Wolves fan, it's the first thing I see when the pyramid stage comes up. But again, it's like, I remember when I worked in London, I used to have to go to Switzerland a lot because they had like a branch there. And I remember being there, and there were some people who had like English parents or English grandparents. And again, they'd be like, "You from Wolverhampton? Oh, you're a Wolves fan?" Just instantly, that was the first thing they'd ask. And straight away, that was it. We'd get talking about it. Like, one guy was like, "Oh, my granddad was a Wolves fan, and he used to go to the games." And you know what I mean? Just straight away, just totally random. You're in another country. You never met these people, but people just know Wolves. I think whenever I say I'm from Wolverhampton, bang, first thing, you're a Wolves fan. Just...
You're right, and it's synonymous, and I may have mentioned this on a previous pod, so apologies if I have, but when I went backpacking, I had a similar story whereby I'd gone from Sydney to Melbourne, and similar to yourself, although it is a big thing to do backpacking on your own, I can be quite shy, particularly in new situations, and I wasn't sure if I should have left Sydney to Melbourne because I'd left some good friends. It took me a while to settle. And I remember just being at the bar, had my Wolves top on, and I was thinking, oh God, have I made the right decision here? And I was pretty down. I was really homesick. And this Spurs fan, came over to me, and it was Robbie Keane, Wolves, and that was in. And then from that point on, I had an amazing time. Now, would he have come over to me and spoke to a random guy at the bar if there was no ice to be broken, if there was no common denominator? Probably not. So
yeah,
I've got that to thank for having a great time, millions of miles away, the other side of the world, because I was a football fan. And I think that's what you're referencing. That's what it unites us all. And, we have had people listen to this series who aren't Wolves fans, and that fascinates me because I think they can still relate to the fact that whilst different clubs have different stories, the whole idea of being a fan and part of a pack or part of following a club is, that you can meet people that you wouldn't ordinarily do, and it can be quite life-changing at times because it opens you up to circles which you may not have been afforded because, you're a fan.
Yeah. I mean, my sister's 12 and she just can't understand it. So me and my brother will be watching the games, hooked, and she's just like, I just don't understand what the appeal is, some men kicking the ball about. And I just said to her, it's just so much more than that. It's the emotion, it's the unpredictability, it's the kinships you form, it's a life choice, you know what I mean?
It
but,
is. And
but that's why I love, I'm sure you're the same. I mean, that's why I love sport.
Yeah.
I love sport because it's just the unpredictability of it, it's what makes life fun.
Absolutely. And on that, we're going to bring this episode to a close. I want to thank Sam so much for joining us on this episode. I want to thank, again, everybody who listens to what we do. Everybody that comes on this podcast, to be fully transparent, they do it of their own free time. Nobody gets paid for it. I don't get paid for it. Nobody's on gets paid for it. So if you do want to support us, I'm not getting my begging bowl out here, but all I would say is share what we do, promote it. Don't make us a stranger. If you like what we do, tell a friend. If you don't, tell them still because they might like it. And give us a 5-star review, and we really do appreciate your support. But before I close this episode with Sam, do you want to just tell people in terms of the best way to follow you online, perhaps in terms of the music? I'll put the links out there, and we'll be closing the audio podcast with your latest single, which is When Love Aint Enough, which is out on the 6th of November. But if people want to know more about you, where's the best place you would say to look?
Yeah, I mean, if you type in Sam Lambeth on Spotify, I should be the first one that comes up. But if not, I'm on Facebook. So it's facebook.com/Sam Lambeth Music, or one word. Same for Twitter. And I'm also on Instagram, again, just Sam Lambeth. So any of those links, like I say, I'll regularly update with news about music and things like that. So yeah, please follow me. Like I say, for me, this is start of a new journey, kind of starting from scratch. So I'm really hoping to just get some people on board with me from the beginning.
Brilliant. Well, we wish you the best with that journey, and to everybody listening, stay safe, and we'll see you soon.